And we're live. So, hi everyone. I'm here today with, I have the great pleasure of being joined by the leader of the National Distributist Party, Tyler White. Hi, Tyler.
Hello, everybody.
How's it going?
It's going good. It's going good today.
All good? Good. Wonderful. Anyway, let's just get straight into it. Small question. What is distributism?
So, distributism, at its core, is an ideology that is mainly sort of based in economics. It basically espouses an economic system where supply chains are sort of shortened in a way where the individual produces most of the goods. This is either through artisanal, cooperative, or small scale local industry sort of means. The ideal is that every community should be somewhat self sufficient. However, national distributism wants the nation state to be self sufficient.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's one thing that I'm always preaching is we need a return of scale, you know?
I'm really sorry you cut out then for me.
Oh gosh. Okay. My next question is, why is distributism preferable to capitalism?
So, distributism is preferable to capitalism for the main reason that it treats the individual with the dignity they deserve. So, whereas in capitalism, capitalism encourages rampant individualism, where the individual is atomized and put down to the smallest level of themselves. This is so they're essentially they're more consumerist. They go out and buy more things instead of engaging with, say, the community. So distributism itself has elements of capitalism in it. However, it makes it more communitarian and makes it doesn't seek to atomize people. It wants to put them in one big community and one communal economic unit. Capitalism itself is also responsible for a lot of the sort of eco issues that we see, mainly sort of plastic. And capitalism also encourages companies to do unsavory things in order to, say, boost their market share or boost shareholders' profits. This wouldn't be a thing in distributism, or at least if the idea of distributism was fully achieved, as the rush to sort of placate stakeholders and shareholders would no longer be a thing, as most big business would be cooperatives owned by the workers, sort of half and half with the initial investor, as say the Mondragon Corporation is the main one in Spain. So if you're interested in how cooperatives work, they're the best example. Capitalism also just sort of it creates a very, very rich class at the top of society that owns most of sort of the big business and the capital, whereas distributism seeks not to redistribute wealth, but redistribute capital so that the people on the bottom can start their businesses and live in a way where they are where they can run their business on their own without being held down by the necessity of working for sort of these huge corporations.
Okay, great. I know you say about redistributing capital. I think there will probably be some sort of free market types out there who are going to be, they're going to raise an eyebrow at that and say, well, this sounds like socialism.
Well, some will say that distributism has elements of both capitalism and socialism. That's part of the ideology. It's sort of a middle way between the two. But redistributing capital isn't taking wealth out of someone's pocket through taxes. You see, it's removing the sort of multinational business that interrupts the natural sort of economics of the UK. What I mean by this is sort of how you get China producing cheaper goods, and our tariffs don't bring the price of Chinese goods up to the UK price, and therefore someone in the UK can't set up a factory and compete with Chinese goods because they would lose to sort of international finance. So getting the capital back is retrieving the sort of money that flows towards these businesses that outsource a lot of their labor and sort of infrastructure to the sort of third world and other countries in America and Europe, and bringing it back to Britain and sort of making our economy work for us as opposed to everyone else, if you get what I mean. So the money would go back to the people at the bottom, and then they can use that to build their business instead of the money going out into a different country.
No, yeah, absolutely. Do you know Luca Johnson, Amiable Arguments? He's in our sort
I
of
do not,
sphere on
unfortunately.
Instagram. Oh, okay, well, he was on Lotus Eaters just sometime last week, I think, and he was talking about sort of the demise of the steel industry within Britain, and how, you know, we've sort of put ourselves in this terrible position where we're reliant on other countries for steel. He was saying, you know, we still have steel industries, but and even though it's very good quality, you know, it's so expensive that people just kind of end up importing it. You know, cheaper and less good steel from abroad. I think that sort of thing probably applies to almost all industries, at least sort of productive industries within Britain. We've outsourced so much to the third world. So for me personally, the idea of putting tariffs on imports sounds great. We should be supporting our local industries, you know, obviously. One thing, so we have spoken before, and I think we both publicly professed agreement with certain aspects of Ted Kaczynski's thought.
Yeah, Ted Kaczynski is obviously, it's a very complicated sort of ideology.
Oh, sorry.
I was saying sort of Ted Kaczynski as an ideology is it's a very quite broad one. So the aspects that I agree on are more sort of the eco sides of things, and I obviously don't espouse terrorism. Essentially, just clarifying that
Yeah.
before we carry on.
Yeah. Well, my the only YouTube video that I've had removed has been the one, you know, my first part of the Ted Kaczynski series. Even though I feel like I made it quite clear that I didn't support his terrorism, but YouTube didn't believe me, I guess. But I don't know, the aspects I think where I agree with him are on the consequences of industrial society with regards to human life, mental health, family and community well-being, our over-reliance on global markets, that sort of thing. Because capitalism does harm people's mental health, and it does destroy community well-being. We've seen neoliberal economics destroy the idea of community. Basically, the only place where you really have any sense of proper community anymore is in very small villages, right?
Yeah, so neoliberalism has essentially destroyed the idea of community, especially in the larger cities. There's not the connections between people that there perhaps once used to be. I think it's still in sort of towns, well, some towns and villages especially, that's still there, the sort of community connection. But you are right. Community is on its way to be abolished, like sort of the idea of the nation state has under liberalism.
Yeah. So, what is a guild, and how does it differ from a trade union?
So a guild is it's it's not a governmental organisation. It's a collection of every sort of worker in a specific artisanal field. So let's say stonemasons, for example, would have the stonemasons guild, where they all meet to discuss. Sorry, my phone just went off, and I'll turn that off while we're talking about Ted Kaczynski. I forgot it was even on.
All good.
There we go. Sorry, someone just trying to call me. So the stonemasons would have their guild, where they, depending on how local the guilds would be, so it would usually be by town or by city. So all of the stonemasons would meet in the guild to discuss the future of their trade and how to keep their trade going, how to keep their trade alive, and how to keep it so that their living standards are high. It's the same sort of idea as a trade union. However, a guild is non-political. So whereas trade unions you find are political entities attached to sort of the Labour Party nowadays, or the Socialist Workers' Party, the guild would be a completely non-political organisation, and they would take over control of things like apprenticeships, would be the main one. They would oversee that, and because right now apprenticeships are sort of overseen by small companies and also by the government. So the trade union, not the trade union, the guild could say, we have an elderly, like our skilled workers in this field are going to be retiring in 10 years' time. So let's take on 5 apprentices, for example, and then that would carry on their trade. And that's not seen today because it's one of those things that is a issue that's going to become very apparent in the next sort of 10 years. Is a lot of companies that do one specific thing aren't training new people to do that specific thing, and experts in these sorts of fields are now about to be retiring in the next 5 years. So a lot of capabilities that we have as sort of like industry in the UK will simply not be possible because we would have lost all the skills.
Yeah, that's one thing that sort of worries me, thinking about the coming decades. You probably heard the term competency crisis.
Yes, yeah. The competency crisis is sort of part of the issue of just we're about to lose a lot of knowledge through companies not really putting in the effort to train the next generation, as they probably know that they're going to outsource it in the next sort of 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, the competency crisis, it worries me. This is one problem that I personally have with, for example, global supply chains, that sort of thing, is the bigger a system gets, the more catastrophic the results will potentially be when any small link in that chain is interrupted in some way. We've seen this with, for example, the Ukraine-Russia war, or during COVID, or immediately post Brexit. Actually, I mean, I'm a fan of Brexit, but we saw petrol stations struggling to get enough petrol because we didn't have enough lorry drivers post Brexit, right? So this is kind of why I'm in favour of the idea of self-sufficiency and keeping things on a smaller, more local level, because then you don't have these kind of issues. One thing I worry about is that going forwards, we're going to make systems that are so complex. I think we're already there, to be honest, creating systems so complex that we sort of become so reliant on, and we just think that they're always going to be running, they're always going to be there in the background. And eventually we forget how they work, and it causes massive issues for us. That's one thing I worry about.
Absolutely, yeah. No, you're 100% correct. The with self-sufficiency and distributism, it would be very managed in a way that would carry on the self-sufficiency. However, the ideal is obviously to be self-sufficient. However, there is just some things that the UK can't do. So some of those connections would have to stay. So, for example, in the UK, we can't really grow bananas en masse, let's say. So if people want bananas, we're going to have to import bananas, and we're going to have to trade something for that. But that would be the only sort of connections still there. That and sort of like air travel and any other things sort of that are required.
Yeah, sure. Anything that we can't do ourselves. Yeah. I guess that leads on to, I know there is a concept within distributism called subsidiarity. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so subsidiarity is it's essentially if a business or industry is vital, so steel would be a good example of this, as we've recently, as you said, lost our capability to make steel in this country. Instead of letting it go bust, the government would prop it up with subsidies. And if a business, like an essential business like steel, wouldn't be able to succeed on just subsidiary, then it would probably have to be put under national ownership. But that is essentially against distributism, to put under the national sort of thing. But an industry as big as steel, the people can't really suddenly go, after a lifetime of work, I'm going to start a steel company. So subsidiary would prop these things up to make sure that Britain can still produce these goods, and that these goods can be bought in the UK from UK companies.
Wi-Fi is terrible as all every time I to do a stream. But I hear what you but can you
You're a bit rattly, but I can sort of hear you, yes.
yeah, very frustrating. Yeah, I guess the way I think of subsidiarity, and I'm kind of, I guess, a little like exclusive reveal or whatever. I'm working on a manifesto, like an actual manifesto, not like the spirit of conservatism ones that I've done. And basically, I think we should have a system where that operates on this like subsidiarity sort of basis, where anything that can be done, things should always be done on the smallest possible. So I think we should have like town councils which will run most of the day-to-day stuff in your town. When it comes to wider like county projects, that would be the remit of the county council, and you would have this sort of these layers going up to the king essentially. And the way I guess the way I envision it would be, if your town council becomes corrupt, or isn't meeting the people's needs, you could sort of you not report them, but you know what I mean. You could sort of report it to your county council, and they would investigate it to make to see what the problem is. Um, so I think in my ideal system, power would be devolved massively, which I think obviously overlaps with distributism. Would Are you at the NDP monarchists? Do you still favour having a king? You don't want to turn us into a republic, do you?
So yeah, the NDP supports the monarchy in its current form. The only sort of reforms we would make to the monarchy is that we would make the monarchy, we would repeal the Act of Settlement, so that the monarch can actually take on a religious role once again and be open with their religion and faith more in the public eye. Even though they are sort of leader of the faith in the UK, that's not the Archbishop of Canterbury. They don't really do their duty, let's say.
Sure. One thing I have to remind people quite often, there's obviously the concept of the separation of church and state, and people will say, well, we shouldn't make laws, for example, against abortion because that's a religious thing, and we have the separation of church and state. But the thing I constantly find myself having to remind people is the reason for the separation of church and state is actually to protect the church from the state, not the other way around. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the separation of church and state was obviously done by Cromwell because, well, he was going to basically, his whole thing was abolishing the Catholic Church, and he wasn't able to do that in the end. But whether that would have stretched out sort of the Protestant Church as well, it's not too sure.
We have a question from Harvey T, who asks, what are both of your views on restoring traditional or at least good-looking architecture? I don't like the cookie-cutter new builds and public buildings not having personality, etc. What do you reckon, Tyler?
Restoring traditional architecture is one of the big sort of things in our manifesto, mainly because new buildings are it's brutalism for a reason. It's designed to make you look almost miserable. So we would basically slowly tear down the sort of 1960s concrete town centres and replace them with sort of buildings like you're seeing here. A good beginning to doing this sort of stuff is to repeal the Town and Country Planning Act from the 1940s and replace it with sort of like a national benchmark for how your building should look. So on land you can sort of build more buildings, so it not only helps sort of aesthetics, it also gets rid of the Town and Country Planning Act and makes it so people can build places like Poundbury on the regular. So more house building can happen, more sort of community buildings can be built. However, it will abide by an aesthetic sort of benchmark, and obviously it will be different for different regions. The one challenge that we will face is, for example, in Gloucestershire, they do want to build more stuff out of Cotswold stone. However, due to the quarries either not being open or completely ran out of stone, we are reaching the last sort of few decades where Cotswold stone will be able to be used to build buildings. But whether we can transfer to like red brick and things like that and make that look pretty instead of relying on concrete for public buildings and other disgusting places.
I didn't know that you were running out of Cotswold stone. That's genuinely really sad. Damn.
Yeah, it's one of those things that is just happening. I think there are still quite a lot of quarries. They're just disused. But it's creating that infrastructure again and creating the sort of creating the environment for those industries to come back and be able to make money, which would actually open up probably a lot more Cotswold stone.
Yeah, so see, the reason I was showing all those pictures of Poundbury is because that's basically my answer to the question. I think Poundbury is brilliant. It looks amazing. I'm not going to get into a massive rant about modernism and postmodernism, but no, I definitely prefer traditional architecture. I think it's it has more personality, it has more heart. It's more human. It's more human than these. I mean, brutalism is just. I mean, it's brutal, man. Like it's awful.
And a lot of people say that it's almost impossible to build or whatever. It's too expensive or the likes. And that's just all rubbish excuses. Germany's a good example, actually, of tearing down sort of disgusting looking town centres and replacing it with beautiful modern architecture again, sort of like it was before being bombed. Hungary is also a benchmark for this. They seem to be very into their traditional architecture at the minute as well, but they limit it just to public buildings. And I'm sure there's more examples from all across the continent of countries being able to do this. It just seems that Britain, for some reason, just doesn't have the will to do it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we've been building disgusting council flats and stuff from concrete for decades, and I mean, I think it's just dreadful. Look at that. I don't know. It's I think brutalism is like intentionally designed to just be like soul destroying. I don't know how anybody could look at this and be like, "Oh yeah, we should have more of this."
And who was sitting on the? This is after the Town and Country Planning Act that these were built as well. Who in those councils in the 1960s was looking at these and going, you know what? Give me some of that. Let's put that through.
Communists.
Yeah, essentially.
It was the communists. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's dreadful. TV Chem says Victorian architecture is the best. I quite like neoclassical stuff myself.
I in London
return to
specifically.
tradition.
Yeah, in London specifically, my favourite sort of houses there are sort of the Georgian ones, the sort of Georgian townhouses. I think London should be built with just those, and obviously keep the red brick in like the East End and stuff, where it's sort of how their style is. But the best Victorian style is pretty good, but nothing will beat the Cotswolds country design of the Cotswold stone and the little village pub and everything. Can't beat it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was recently visiting family who live in a small village near Lincoln, and like it's just such a nice little village. Like it feels very traditional. It had the little pub that was like slightly wonky because of how old it is. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. TV Chem asks, do distributists believe in the Labour theory of value?
So the Labour theory of value is obviously it's Marx, isn't it? It's sort of the amount something is worth is the amount of time and effort that something is put into it. I think in terms of needed goods, so this is again going back to like steel and stuff. The Labour theory of value does hold up because that is actually valuable to begin with. However, if you put like 80 hours into a piece of art and it's absolutely dross, then it has no value. The painting shouldn't be valued because you put 80 hours on there. You shouldn't just times it by 10, for example. So it's one of those things that it works in a sort of a more industrial, like a more managed. You know, you get paid £10 an hour to make this, therefore X good. If you spend an hour on it, it needs to make £10 for it to be to break even. I think with artisans and things, it's a bit different. I think it's the price of something is based on the quality of the artisan good instead of the amount of time that went into it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I heard, it was years ago, so I couldn't tell you who it was, but I heard somebody talking about we should replace money with like work coupons, and so it was like you would be paid in hours. You know what I mean? Like you work an 8-hour shift, you would get 8 like coupons. You know?
Yeah.
And this would be the same for like everybody in every job. And it would all be worth exactly the same.
Well, in that case, why would you become like? What's the incentive to go and work in the mines if you can just go and I don't know, hand out copies of the Big Issue for the same amount?
Yeah. Well, TVChem says so. Just money? No, I mean like you would get a coupon that was worth like 1 hour, and you could trade that for goods or whatever that are worth however many hours. But the fact is, a doctor and somebody handing out copies of the Big Issue or whatever would both earn like 8 hours a day. I just thought that was really, really insane. Yeah, crazy stuff. Oh, we're getting a lot of questions today. Damn. Yep. How much thought would go into preserving tradition in the 4 nations in the UK? Is it worth preserving the Welsh, Celtic, and even Cornish languages, and even promoting traditional dressings, etc.?
Absolutely, yeah. In the NDP, we would put in policy to support the sort of Celtic nations. This includes the Cornish as well. I myself did once, many years ago, try and learn Welsh. I just about got Bore Darin and Arlani More, but promoting traditional dressings, absolutely. You know, the UK clothing would be the main companies to buy from. So Levi's and stuff, there would either be a British equivalent, but things like Barber, I imagine, and companies like that would get more popular. Would see the wax jacket sort of come back into major fashion, although it has been coming back in the past few years. Tweed and stuff would also probably get a boost from this, as it would be able to outcompete the other sort of nylon suits that are brought over from the Americas. Proper sort of traditional dresses, though, it's all up to the individual what they want to wear. I think in the country at the minute, I don't think many people would take it on. However, I think the sort of new traditional dress, if it's your sort of Barber jackets, your flat caps, and everything, would probably make a comeback in a distributist system, because although the choice of clothing will be limited, the quality of it will be higher. So there would be no more sort of fast fashion and everything. So you would go out and buy a quality dress and wear that for sort of 3 years, and whatever is made by the tailors and things would set the benchmark for what actually is the sort of clothing culture, as opposed to the fast fashion that's brought over from China, India, and Africa.
I think that's one thing that we desperately need is far more protectionism to be able to like rebuild our own native industry and production. But
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know. But we'll see if that happens. We'll see if that ever ends up happening. But so anyway, Tyler, let's talk about you.
Yes. Okay.
If you don't mind.
No, just go for it.
When and why did you first become interested in politics?
Oh, I became interested in politics years ago. I've always been sort of political. I think the first recordings of me being political are sort of in primary school, to be honest. And it's sort of been handed down from my parents, I would say. However, I have developed my thoughts beyond that, but that was the original influence for being political. My dad's always been quite espoused in his views. But I actually really started becoming more sort of active in politics sort of around, I want to say it was 2018, 2019. That's when I sort of started in UKIP to begin with, just after sort of the referendum and everything. So it could have easily been sort of 2016 that I started in politics. Oh, Matt's disappeared. Hello, everyone. Right, I'll just answer some questions since Matt has gone. I'll just carry on my own. I think the money system you describe, what mutualists believe. I wouldn't know, to be honest. Mutualist, that is a word that I've heard, but I can't say it's something that I've looked into. I wouldn't mind suit and ties becoming commonplace again. Me neither. I'm always out there, pretty much every day, in either my tweed or my linen suit. I've just ordered a new pinstripe, which I'm quite excited to receive. I think linen suits are actually really good for sort of the summer. Everyone comes up to me and goes, "Oh, you must be boiling in that thing," and then I open it up and it's like it's made of linen. It's made for like going on safari in Africa and stuff like that. Suits and ties becoming commonplace again also just raises the standard of dress that you see. Luckily, we're not as far gone as America, where people go and go shopping in pajamas and that sort of thing. Welcome back, Matt. Had a bit of an issue there. Hello?
Hello. Yeah,
You're
internet's
back.
being mental. Um, so yeah, didn't hear most of that unfortunately, but we're getting lots of questions today. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Okay. Wait. Actually, before we get into that question, um, I will ask you the origins of distributism are in Catholic social teaching, right? So,
Yes.
so to what extent is the National Distributist Party a Christian party?
So we are a yeah, we're a pretty big Christian party. A lot of the members are Christians, but we all come from different denominations. So we're not specifically a Catholic party, so to say. Although a lot of our policy is derived from Catholic social teaching and the works of sort of Christian Chesterton and Belloc, who did take a lot of their theory from the Catholic Church itself and the initial text of, say, Rerum Novarum from Pope Pius. Obviously, in our party, it's mainly made up of Protestants, Catholics, and we have a few Orthodox. But yeah, we are definitely a Christian party, and to some extent a Catholic party.
Okay, yeah. So that leads us on to a question that Harvey T asked: to promote Christianity, would it be worth giving certain tax cuts to people that attend church, not increasing them for atheists, but cutting them for those that attend Christian institutions?
I think when it comes to a policy like that, it would be very difficult to actually implement it. Sort of, you would either have to have the priest there with a roll of everyone in the constituency and tick it off or something like that, which is open to sort of corruption, I guess, in the way that we see uh, some priests today baptizing boat migrants in order to get them visas to say that they're Christians when they're actually not, and things like that. I think if we had a high trust society, we could look at something like that. I think there's more direct ways that we could, say, encourage Christian sort of thought in the UK. Obviously, Christianity is less than half of the population now, or it's just about half. So it's trying to figure out how to get the other 50% interested. Tax cuts, I think it would work on a smaller scale. It would definitely benefit the people who already go to church, which is a good thing, because they would be able to spend that money on their family or provisions they need. But whether it would work on a larger scale, as in the whole country, that would have to be tested because it's not something we've really spitballed yet.
Yeah. So, what is the? Can you walk us through the history of the National Distributist Party? How long have you been around, etc., etc.?
So the National Distributist Party has been around, in theory, since 2020 or late 2019, sort of around that time. It was launched by our spokesman now, Joseph. He usually does a lot of the videos and things that get put out on our YouTube channel and our Instagram. However, I became leader of the Distributist Party in it was October 2021. So I've been leader for nearly 3 years now. It started off as basically when I became leader, it was the first time or the second time that the party had met with other people who were interested in the idea. So we were just a group of sort of scattered individuals. And then from there on Christmas, the day before Christmas, 2022, we officially got registered with the Electoral Commission as a minor party. What this means is we can run in parish elections, but we cannot run in district, county, or general elections. We don't see it as a priority simply because we don't have the infrastructure. So it would be a waste of £500 for us to run for Parliament and get 1% of the vote because our infrastructure just isn't there yet. So we will in the future be looking to run more sort of parish councillors, and I think once we hit a target of sort of 5 or 10, we'll start looking into district councillors and sort of expanding ourselves through local means.
And am I right in saying that you're a councillor for your local area?
Yeah, so I am the first councillor for the National Distributist Party. I'm a parish councillor. So whereas a parish council is non-political, so the politics of the people in the council doesn't really matter because you sort out bus shelters, organise events for the local community and the likes. So it's not our first sort of political position. That would be when we get a district council seat. However, yes, I am the first councillor for the Distributist Party, and I also ran for parish council in Stonehouse in 2023, where I did lose. So
Okay.
I've ran in 2 elections for parish council and I've won 1.
But didn't you got about something like 8% of the vote, didn't you? That's not bad for a first time.
Yeah, so it was there was 2 candidates. It was me as a plucky 19-year-old running with basically no experience or anything in the real world, to be honest. I was working in a shop at the time, and that was about it. Whereas now I have an actual sort of vocation, and my opposition candidate was sort of ex-RAF, big in the community, that sort of thing. The case of Stonehouse was it wasn't actually where I lived. It was just within the boundary. I seen it come up, and I thought, to officialize the party, makes an official party in the eyes of people, because a lot of when starting a new party, a lot of people see it and go, "You haven't even ran in an election. Why should I support you?" So I thought, I'd put myself on the line, and I'd run to be able to make it official. Yeah.
Fair play, fair play. And so you, as a parish councillor, is that you said that politics aren't really sort of relevant to that, but did you run sort of on behalf of the NDP, or are you just like an independent, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I ran as a national distributist candidate. However, it functions as if it's just a group of independents.
Okay.
So there's no like coalitions being formed like you see in district councils. You're all just individuals, and you all do everything based on what you think, as opposed to like the party line.
Okay, fair enough. Does the National Distributist Party support a shift to proportional representation?
Yes, we do. Mainly because, politics is fundamentally broken in the UK. We're one of the only places that uses first past the post. And it's first past the post is one of the reasons why we are in a decline at the minute, because no new ideas are actually breaking through the mold, because people aren't confident enough in voting for sort of small ideas and being able to push them into sort of the forefront of politics. A lot of what you see on the continent where there is proportional representation, you'll obviously still have a centre-right party and a centre-left party, but then it'll be surrounded by sort of the smaller fringe parties who will have more of a say when a coalition needs to be arranged. And also, if the public actually wants Germany is a good example where immigration is a big issue. They voted for the CDU to reduce immigration, and they haven't. Obviously, Angela Merkel increased it exponentially, and so instead of being stuck in the 2-party system of the CDU and the SDP or the SPD, whichever one it's called, you're able to vote for the third party of the AFD or something similar to that, or you can be more confident in voting for people like the Greens. and it's just a more fair system. People don't have to feel guilty for sort of voting strategically and tactically. They can actually just vote for who they want to vote for.
Yeah, no, sure. Because that's a part of the big problem with first past the post is you inevitably end up having essentially just a two-party system, right? You have the blues versus the reds, you know. So I'm personally undecided on whether I like proportional representation or not, but I think it's fair enough that you guys do, especially
I,
because. Oh, sorry, go on.
I think parties like first past the post when they're in power, and then they don't like first past the post when they're not in power because it blocks them. A good example of this is Labour. Tony Blair did say he would get rid of first past the post, and then once he was like, "Oh, I actually have a good vote share," he didn't. So it's difficult because obviously we would like proportional representation now so that we can start building and having influence in politics. Obviously, it would make it harder for us if we are in power, did get into a position of power, where first past the post would probably be preferred. However, with first past the post, it is essentially super difficult to be able to even get into any form of parliamentary power. So it's deciding whether to play the super long game, talking like hundreds of years of probably building a movement, or sort of 50 years of proportional representation where you can have a decent chunk and sort of do moderate distributist reforms, which is the route that I would prefer to go down, as opposed to sort of overhauling everything, because I don't see that as realistic in sort of how first past the post works.
Yeah, sure. I guess that brings me nicely onto the question of, so what then are the medium and long-term plans for the National Distributist Party?
So I'll start with our sort of short-term plans. So short-term plan is sort of the next 5 years, I would say. The next 5 years, our goal is to just get more candidates to be running in council in small parish elections. Hopefully we will win, and the target is about 5 in sort of 5 parish councillors before we put our registration in for to become what's classed as a major party, so we can run in all the other elections. And then from there, we will start standing in district, county, and mainly district and county, and maybe a police crime commissioner or something if we have the funding to be able to do that. But so short term is get a few more parish councillors and candidates. Medium term is to hopefully get a sort of district council seat or a county council seat. And then long term, which is sort of 30 years, is to hopefully get someone in Parliament. However, that is easier said than done.
Yeah. I like to think, and my bias will show here, I'm not just like an impartial interviewer. I like to think you'll start getting MPs sooner than 30 years. But we'll see. We'll see. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems you guys are probably, because of your ideology, more focused on local politics anyway, rather than sort of national politics.
Yeah. So local politics, especially for a small party like ours as well. Local politics is where you get your vocation, basically, in how government actually works, and you learn the processes of how to do things. So our focus on local politics at the minute is more so we can get people to gain experience in how politics actually works, sort of creating legislation and voting on it and all of that sort of jazz. And it's also get people more out into the community as community leaders and people who can influence things beyond the legislature. 3, community politics is where political power is built, and then from there you use it as a stepping stone to run for bigger things. A lot of parties you see today, they'll focus on parliamentary stuff. A good example of this is Lawrence Fox. He only does parliamentary elections, and they don't get very good results because they don't have the people on the ground to be able to build stuff. They just go into one place for 3 months and then leave, and there's nothing done after that.
Sure. So I would like to ask a more philosophical question, and that unfortunately is going to involve me quoting some of my own work, so I hope you'll bear with me.
Okay.
Here. But I would like to basically ask how you conceptualize the place of the individual within the world. And so I'll sort of give a quote from my work to show you the sort of thing that I'm asking. Responsibility begins in the immediate surroundings and grows outwards. If one cannot take responsibility for himself, he cannot care for his family. If he cannot care for his family, he cannot contribute to his community. If he cannot contribute to his community, he cannot benefit the health of the nation. Conversely, a sick nation produces degraded communities, which produce feeble families, which produce weak men. As the relations between individual, family, community, and nation are all interrelated and interlinked, a deficit in any of these areas comprises a deficit in all. So that's my view of personal responsibility, essentially, is that it grows outwards. And the framework I use in the spirit of conservatism is you have the individual, the family, the community, and the nation. And essentially it is an individualistic approach because it understands that that ultimately we're only really responsible for our own actions because they're the only things that we can directly control, but that this individuality has to be nested within a greater whole, which takes into account the thoughts and feelings of your neighbors, your wider community, and the nation as a whole. Anyway, that's a very long-winded way to ask you, how do you conceptualize the place of the individual, sort of broadly in within the world?
So I personally, I'm when it comes to the individual, I like to think that the way it should be is in the vein of Burke, sort of the little platoons of so basically what I'm trying to say is the individual should aspire to be a member of the community. That is the natural goal of the individual, is to be in a community. So even if everything is sort of individualized as it is now, individuals will still find communities, whether that be online or cities away. But the way it should be is the individual seeks the community of the village or the town, and then that town acts as the sort of little platoon of people where there's a strong culture there for the individuals to then thrive. So if enough individuals sort of make the effort in a community, and there is a strong community in, say, a village or a town, the effect will bounce back to the people who don't want to be part of a community, and they will become a part of the community anyway, simply because it is a sort of, it is just in the nature to be sort of sucked into it. And then it's a difficult question. But do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because I also look at it from a Burkean position as well, where we are defined by, and how to say it, the proper mode of identity formation, I think, should come from your relations to others, your social relations. You should sort of define yourself and be defined as a member of your family and a member of your community. You know, you're a brother to a sister, you're a son to a father. You know, one day you'll be a father to a son, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and if when you are a member of the community, sort of as I have become now, you'll find that you stop to talk to a lot of people, and there's a lot of joy in that that was not previously there. When if you're not a member of the community, all the people around you are simply, that they're individuals. They're just another atom. Whereas if you're actually part of the community and doing your bit to make your area better, you'll find that you'll start to talk to these people, and they actually become sort of like more human because you know them. What you do does actually affect these people because they'll talk to you about it. And
Absolutely.
there's something fulfilling in that for the individual as well.
Absolutely. Again, I'm going to betray the fact that I'm not like an impartial interviewer here, because I actually did write a piece for your tabloid tonight, The Hound, which we'll plug properly at the end. But
Yeah.
I said in my article for The Hound that we people who live in cities tend to live solipsistically. They view the people around them solely in terms of their function, like the Starbucks employee who makes their coffee, or the Amazon driver who hands them their package. They're no longer like humans. You know, they're purely means to ends. Um, I think that's terrible.
They are solely defined by their role in a chain, as opposed to sort of being in the sort of outer, um, like in the outer web of actual society, and sort of have an actual sort of culture. It's just like this person's a role, and they're solely defined by that. Whereas in
Yeah,
a smaller community like a village, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's John the postman, and I chat to him down the pub and we play chess or something.
yeah. But do you play chess in your pub?
I don't play chess in the pub, but I do play a lot of sort of like snooker and pool and stuff, darts every now and then.
Hmm.
But yeah, you see everyone in the village down the pub, and then you walk out of the pub, and if you're just doing work in the village, people just stop by and have a chat to you while you're like at work, and
Hmm.
it's no longer like just a role thing. Like, oh, that's that there. It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
there's thingy from this. I'll go and have a chat with them.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if people play chess in your pub, then I definitely need to come there sometime and have a pint or three. But
It's when I was in Oxford, there was a lot of chessboards in pubs. I noticed.
hipsters.
Yeah, it's either hipsters or people who want to like pretend to be smart. Like, I go to Oxford, so I'll play chess in the pub.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I would love to have a few pints of cider and play some chess in a pub.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. I think we should. That should be an NDP policy. Free chessboards for every pub. But
If you come down to Gloucestershire at all, I'll take you to one of our more traditional pubs, and we'll play a game of I've forgotten what it's called, but it's kind of like snooker.
oh,
Uh,
pool.
it's basically pool, but you need
Hmm.
to like shoot the ball at the back end of the table, and then
Hmm.
there's like holes in the table with like mushrooms basically coming out of them,
Oh my
uh,
god.
with points on them. So you got to hit off the back to then get it in like the certain hole, and that's how it's scored. Trust me, we'll come down Gloucester,
Oh,
I'll show you.
that sounds mental. That sounds like a cross between pool and what's it called? Pinball.
Yeah, like skee ball almost. Yeah,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, definitely. We'll make that happen at some point. Absolutely. But returning to the point about community, as I said, I was recently visiting some family who live in a very small traditional English village, um, and I was taking my niece for a walk while we were there, and she's 2, so she's little and cute. I was taking her for a walk, and like every old lady we saw, we had to stop and have a chat with, because they just wanted to talk to us, and it was like, oh, this is nice. I don't mind old ladies stopping me to have a chat. I mean, it made the walk take forever, but it was cool. It was nice to stop and have a little chat with a little old lady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to like Morrison's in the village is something that should take like half an hour, but it takes me like two, because like in
Yeah.
every aisle there's someone I know to talk to, and
I,
it's stuff like that which just makes like more communal living more comfy, basically.
mm, mm. I think people view our sort of social obligations and responsibilities as like unfair constraints on their individuality, but I view it as the thing that makes that gives life meaning. Really, like if you don't derive meaning from your social relations, your friends, and your family, and your wider community, then what are you living for? Really?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously ways to be self-fulfilled as an individual, but I think that's reserved for people who are just more artistic in nature, whereas like the average Joe is naturally communal and gets enjoyment out of the community, and without it, does suffer immensely, as the connection isn't there. A part of nature is almost taken away in an individualistic society. A hyper individualistic society, shall we say?
Sure. No, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Um, so we're sort of getting close to the end now, but I have a few more questions. So this is sort of a big one, I suppose, but at the same time, we've kind of already touched on it, so maybe not. Um, could you tell me what, in your opinion, what the good life is? What is the good life?
So the good life is essentially the Shire from the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. Uh, in fact, Tolkien, or it's theorized that Tolkien made the Shire as sort of like his model of distributism, which is something here or other. But it should essentially be that you you can go to work in something fulfilling because it directly impacts your community. And then after work, you can go and be a part of the community in either a club or down the pub or something like that, And you should be able to. I mean, for me personally, I like to spend a lot of time in nature. So for me, the ideal life, the good life, is one that is intertwined with nature specifically, but not in like a hippie way where I want to suddenly hug trees. Um, yeah, one where just your environment is pleasing, the people around you are pleasing, and your job pleases you. It's it shouldn't be so difficult in this day and age to be able to achieve those three sort of things. But unfortunately, due to the sort of forces at hand, through either government or just the general wind, it's become more difficult to attain those sort of three pillars of the good society.
I think especially nature is I think there's something sort of transcendent about being in nature um, that is totally lost for many people today. I'm lucky enough to live in a village. You live in a village, so we get to spend time with nature. But there are many, many people who don't, and I don't know. I don't think that can be good for your psyche, really.
Yeah, I do think that cities in particular are antithetical to, say, the good life.
Yeah, I lived in uh, quite a large city for about 3 months, and literally we got there. It was okay for like a couple of weeks, and then the next like 2.5 months were spent on trying to leave.
The
Basically,
novelty wears off, and
yeah,
then you're like, oh, actually,
yeah. It wore off
there's
very, very quickly, and we had
yeah.
people living on. We were in a flat, so we had people either side of us, people above us. Luckily, we were on the ground floor, so there was nobody below us. But it was people walking around, slamming cupboards in the middle of the night. There was a bus stop directly out of our kitchen window, so you would have teenagers sitting there shouting at each other and getting drunk, and it was awful. It was horrible. So yeah, we sort of immediately basically set about like making a plan to leave. And we now live in a village, so we learned our lesson. We're much happier here, and we know that we never want to do that again. So
Yeah.
yeah, we learned our lesson. So would you like to plug the NDP, let people know where they can find you, etc., etc.?
Yeah, so if you want to know more about sort of the in-depths of National Distributist policy, you can go to our website, nationaldistributist.com. Nationaldistributistparty.com. Or you can find us on Instagram. That's our main sort of social. However, we are also on Facebook and X now. I myself am only on Instagram, Tyler White Gloss. I sort of keep it as a personal thing. So unless we have a chat sort of at a conference or anything like that, it's very unlikely that I'll let you follow me, to be honest. But you can track what I do through the National Distributist Party account. We do have our second edition of our newspaper, The Hound, which is currently for sale on our store on nationaldistributistparty.com. And we've also got our conference in Manchester on July 22nd of this year. It's free to come along. There's no tickets. We accept anybody who is interested. And there'll be a warm welcome. And yeah, we'll have a bit of carousing, I expect.
Sounds great. And so where and when is that again?
So it is in Manchester on July 22nd.
July 22nd. I'll see if I can be there. I'll do my best.
I think it's July 22nd. It could be the 28th. Sorry, I'm not very good at dates.
Sometime at the end of July.
Yeah.
But if people are that interested, they'll go to Instagram and check it. So
yeah, an announcement will come out on our Instagram, our Twitter, etc. in the coming sort of weeks.
Okay, well, Tyler, thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Been wonderful chat. Everybody watching, thank you for watching and asking questions and so on. And we'll see you all soon. Thank you, Tyler.
No problem. Thank you.